Well, hello everybody on today. Thank you for tuning in to another TB Stewart Ministries event that we are hosting today in the form of a panel discussion on today that I feel is going to be relative to where the body of Christ is today. And we are so excited for another creative way to be able to bring a discussion as it relates to concerns and questions that I feel that are upon the heart of so many in the pew. And today we are calling this particular panel or discussion the Huddle. The Huddle. Yes, this is what this is, the Huddle. And I am so excited to have some brilliant, intellectual, bright, sharp gentlemen who have accepted our invitation to come and be a part of this discussion on today. And I know you're going to be blessed by what God has given to them to share, to give some insights, some enlightenment, to let you know that we as men of God, we understand, and our ear is to the mouth of those who are asking questions about the church of today, the condition of the church of the day, and where is the church going as it relates to the future. And I'm excited today to have, as I stated, three individuals who have taken the time to come and be with us today. And I'm going to introduce them to you before we get started with our huddle. And to my far right today, my immediate right rather, is Pastor Jamel Johnson, who is the pastor of one of the most fastest growing churches here in our city, the Word Church.
Amen.
And I want to thank you, Dr. Jamel Johnson, for being with us today and taking the time to join us on today in the Huddle.
Thank you, sir.
Well, everybody knows Dr. Eric Brown. He's a prolific writer, he's a scholar, he's a theologian. He's an out-of-the-box thinker. He operates on the cutting edge. He's a daredevil. He's willing to get out the boat and walk on the water. He's a faith walker. He's a man that believes in what God says can be done. He takes God literally at His word. I've been a part of His ministry, and I've seen how that church is just growing by leaps and bounds, and he's doing great things in his community. And I'm excited today to invite to the Huddle Dr. Eric Brown, pastor of the Exodus Church.
Amen.
Welcome, Dr. Brown. Glad to have you
so much, Bishop.
on today.
Thank you.
And all the way from Shreveport, Louisiana, as well as Dallas, Texas, I tell you, I'm excited that my friend drove all the way down to be a part of the Huddle with us today. And he is a brilliant individual, bright mind, and he's in tune with the times of today. And I felt this conversation piece would not be complete and it wouldn't be satisfactory without having Dr. Eric Sims to come and to share with us today. Dr. Sims, welcome to the Huddle. It's such a joy to have you on today, sir.
Good to be here. I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited to have you, sir. I really am. I'm about to jump off this stool, and all of these gentlemen, they have hectic schedules, but they think a lot about this little Titus Stewart to come and to hang with him today. And I'm humble, I'm excited, and I'm privileged on today. Well, we're going to get this conversation on the road today, and as I stated to you today, here in the Huddle, I want to hear from these gentlemen, their views, their thoughts as it relates to where the church is at, the culture, how the church ought to address certain things that are facing us in this day and time as it relates to the growth, many who are staying, leaving, considering leaving, why they won't come back, what we're doing right, what we've done wrong, what we can do to make things better. Because I really believe that the gentlemen, the pastors that I have here today, they have a concern. And they're in tune, they're sensitive, they're informative, and they're educated, they are knowledgeable, and they have something to say to our viewing audience today as it relates to us being connected to this generation of today, and to see how we can better serve you as pastors and leaders, so that we can see the optimum and maximum dividends occur in these last days that we're living in. So I'm going to get this conversation going.
Let's get it
And
started.
I don't see why we can't get this conversation going with my friend and my brother,
Oh, wow.
Dr. Eric Sims.
All right, let's go.
All right, you ready, my friend?
Let's go.
Look how damn he looking.
Oh, he's
now.
smooth.
Oh, man.
He cleaning the
I'm
ambulance
trying.
sheet.
Ambulance sheets.
He's clean.
That's a new one. I got to remember that one.
All right, guys, we're going to get this conversation going here. All right, Dr. Sims,
Yes, sir.
will you kind of take us, open the gate? I want to put a question to you today, and I want to hear your heart and see how you feel and your perspective as it relates to the era that we're in. And my question is to you today to start this conversation, and that is, with the world constantly changing and evolving, what are some of the challenges that you are facing trying to lead people in this era?
I think one of the most challenging things that I'm facing personally, and I'm sure that you guys will be able to relate on some level or another, and that is being able to effectively communicate and manifest ministry in an era in which we have no reference for.
Okay.
We don't have a reference for the times that we're in right now. Prior to us entering into this postmodern church that we're in right now, the bridges were a lot closer together. So you had a reference. You could point back to the old landmarks and it'll keep you. Well, because of the way technology and society is advancing at an accelerated speed, we're unable to really reach for those references or point to those references because they're obsolete.
Wow.
One of the greatest challenges that we're facing is our ability to stay relevant when all of the tools and techniques are obsolete. In other words, I would say it this way, when you read certain scripts from the book, you'll see that those scriptures were translated to express or to communicate to that particular time era that it was written to.
Okay.
It was interpreted to be understood by that particular era of time, those who dwelled in that dispensation. So now the question is, in this dispensation of time, in this era of time, how would those same scriptures be read and how would they be interpreted? And it's up to us as messengers of the gospel to be able to translate or transliterate, if you will, the text in a way that is relevant to today. Christ talked mostly about agriculture during his parables. So now agriculture is not one of the most prominent industries in our economy.
Yeah.
So you have to stay relevant when you talk about. People can understand more about social media and the internet than they can about agriculture nowadays. So we have to be able to maintain that relevancy, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's a challenging part, and we've got to be able to, we got to be able to master that and mind that. And I think as pastors, we should always be future finders. It's our responsibility to take our pursuit and our seek after God into the future, apprehend what it is that God desires to manifest in the church, bring it back in the form of revelation, show the people of God so that when we get to it in the future, it won't be a strange thing to them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So pastors have to be future finders.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So that means we got to constantly be researching. We got to constantly keep our buzz of questioning and searching and staying in environments that
Yes.
can push us and challenge us, and really go out there and be nosy
Yeah.
and see what's happening.
And stay in front of us. We gotta look in front of us and not behind us all the time.
Wow.
One thing that we're good at in this church right now, in this hour, is talking about what's behind us. Any message about your past, anything about what you've been through, that stuff excites us. But whenever you have someone that is having to deal with or address the future, everyone gets nervous because it's something they never heard before.
Wow. That was awesome. I mean, I like the part that you said we have to be future finders.
Yes, sir.
Wow. That's awesome. I'm gonna take that nugget with me. All right, I want to talk to another future finder in the person of Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown, I like to pose the same question to you. With the world constantly changing and evolving, what are some of the challenges that you are facing trying to lead people in this era?
Well, I think the most important consistency and also keeping truth relevant in the sense of, like you said, taking an archaic text and making it relevant to the day. That's one of the challenges because most people in our churches now come and the biblical literacy is very, very low. And so you're going to have to take things of today that they can relate to and transcribe it with truth and put it right in their lap for them to understand it. It's typical to those of us all of us have children. When, at the age when you were feeding your child, you would take what you had and you would chew it up and you would give it to them. Same nutrients, same balance and everything, but they could not chew it in the form with which you chewed it. And so when God gives us revelation, I like to say there's 3 levels. God gives revelation, interpretation, then we have to prepare it for application. So we get the grocery, revelation, and now it's up for us to cook it, interpretation, and then we give it to them for them to eat it in order for them to applicate it. And so that's the challenge of a pastor now in this modern time, taking an archaic text, bringing it to the forefront now in this modern age, make it applicable for those who hear it so they can walk this thing out. So it's such a challenge because the biblical literacy is at an all-time low.
Wow.
30, 40, 50 years ago, when people came to church, they had some semblance of who Moses was, who Noah was, who the Hebrew boys were. I mean, now, if you mention this to this modern age, they typically have no idea who you're talking about. So in order for them to understand it, you're going to have to take something that they understand and bring it together with the text in order to lay it in their lap. So it's the challenge of consistency, of bringing truth to the forefront in this modern age. And what I mean by consistency is having people who come in because, generally millennial age, and that's what most of our churches are being flooded with now. Millennials are different. They're different beasts. And Johnson is a prolific man as it relates to leading millennials. So I leave that up to him. But I have some in my church, and it's a challenge because millennials they'll make a decision to leave your church, not because you did anything wrong. It's just that they live in that fast-paced age now. Everything changes every 2 or 3 years. New cell phones, everything. Every time a new cell phone come out, they just have to change. Nothing wrong with their current cell phone. They just want a new one. And so sometimes they say, "Well, Pastor, it's time for me to leave." Why? I don't know. Just want to try something different. And so just the consistency of bringing truth to people who have the mentality, if it's time to move around, to plant them in a place for them to grow in this modern age by bringing truth and sitting it in the lap.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Dr. Jamel Johnson, I want you to jump in on this conversation. You're pastoring a very thriving ministry, and you have a lot of millennials.
Yes.
A lot of millennials in your church, and I think that you can give us a perspective today in the huddle that could shed light on this question.
One thing that I'll say, I'm feasting off of both answers from both Dr. Aries. To be where I am now, pastoring who I'm pastoring, I had to unlearn what I learned. What I knew church as, I had to allow myself to understand people nowadays are not looking for church, they're looking for Christ. And so a lot of our traditional based principles are based on church, right?
Absolutely.
with this millennial generation, and even more so now with Generation Z,
Yeah.
right? Our teens,
Yeah.
they are looking more now for accessibility, right? So they're looking for the word to be relative. They're looking for the worship to be authentic, but they're looking for accessibility. They want to be able to reach out and touch. So I grew up Baptist, was a youth pastor at a Kojic church.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Started my church being a youth pastor out of an apostolic church.
Wow.
And my family comes from a Methodist church.
Oh, you were confused.
Multicultural.
Yeah.
So I understand, sir.
Right. So with Louisiana flair, I bring a gumbo pot.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what I've come to understand is, and it's not necessarily a challenge, but once you understand the dynamic, you'll appreciate it. Stop making church a melting pot and let it be a salad bowl. Because when you put different ingredients in a melting pot,
Yeah.
everything now forms into one congealed lump of something brand new.
Mm-hmm.
So what I see now in the salad bowl is I don't come and try to change you as soon as I meet you.
Right.
The first thing I do is understand what Jesus said, with love and kindness have I drawn you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
But I do that by developing relationships. The Barna Group said something that was so crazy a couple of years ago. They said for this millennial generation, warm is the new cool. So when we were growing up, coming out of the 80s, 90s, the mega church experience was what everybody was shooting for.
Yeah.
And if you were not mega, you were doing something wrong as a pastor.
Yeah.
But there was no context to tell us 20 years later what mega church looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Because prior to that, the church was a family.
Yeah.
It was an extension of the family.
That's right.
That's right.
Everybody was cousins. Everybody knew somebody. Everybody went to school together. We never really understood this juggernaut where we had different people from different backgrounds who moved in, who were transient, who maybe were only here for a couple of months, couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
and were here at this church. And so we did not know how to give it longevity.
That's right.
What the Barna Group said is, with this new generation, they're going back to what the church was established on. This new generation is looking to go back to Acts 2.
Okay.
They're looking for more smaller settings
Yes.
where they can touch, where if I have a question, if I have a concern,
Yeah.
I'm not having to go through 6 people to
Yeah.
find out that I have to go through another 4 people
Yeah.
to get to the one person
That I had to answer.
that I have
They
to
want
get the
that
answer
personal
from.
touch.
Yeah.
They want the personal touch. Now, the challenge about that is that, to Dr. Eric's point, they are extremely open to brand new,
Yeah.
Okay.
which in church, we are open to longevity. Dr. Sam Chan said this, messed me up. He said the shift in the church that we need to embrace going into millennial church, 21st century, postmodern church, is stop expecting somebody that's trained for a sprint to run a marathon.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
That's
So he
good.
said, so years ago, someone would be over the usher board for 10 years.
Yeah.
He said, but this generation may give you 6 months.
Yep.
That's right.
Allow them to give you the best out of the 6 months, but train them to be good sprinters. So when that 6 months come to an end, by month 5, they're stretching their hand out, passing the baton.
Wow.
Right.
And we're not starting over.
That's good. That's exactly what it is.
I tell you,
That's where we
that
are.
is awesome. Listen, I'm enjoying this huddle
Yeah.
conversation. My God, just hearing the insight and to the exposure, the content that is being shared in the huddle as it relates to where the church is presently at, and the various angles of consideration that we got to bring into the scope of all of this, so that we don't lose this era. And I believe that all that has been shared thus far from each of you, there's some pastors that's listening right now.
Yes.
And I pray that you're being open to hear these variances of concepts and theories that are being expressed right now, because I'm taking all this in. Even though I'm hosting this, you guys are helping me and giving me a different perspective on how to address this present day church. And I like that, Dr. Jamel Johnson, is that this generation is not looking for church, they're looking for Christ. My God, that's awesome. And you're speaking so prolifically well that I want to continue take you to my next question on today. All right. I hope you guys are enjoying yourself because this is this is some good stuff, and I feel that this conversation is long overdue. Okay. And I want to make it very clear. I think I'm the oldest one in this circle. I'm the senior citizen.
By far.
By far.
We're going to pray for Dr. Brown. As you see, we got some other things we need to talk about today. But what I'm saying, I wanted you to hear the maturity, the growth, the seasonness that's in this circle. Even though we have 30, 36, 40, go on, tell it, man. Don't tell it.
Give me 3 years.
20, 25. We're going to have some psychological conversations. But
Yeah, you're 36.
But the point that I'm making is that I would have loved to have these type of conversations with our fathers.
Yes.
And this is not to downplay or to downgrade any.
It's the truth, though. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I think I could have saved myself a lot of mistakes if these type of intimate sessions or conversations were implemented. But I think that we've been able to sit back, watch, and learn. As Dr. Jamel stated that he's been a part of every religion under the sun, and but the point I'm making is you've seen it all, and you've seen it from all different religious sectors and the approach that many of those who you looked up to, and you saw some things that may have been right, some things that were distasteful, that has caused you to take the approach that you're taking towards ministry today, which leads me to my second question. Now, let's talk about being relative.
Yes, sir.
And you seem to be that kind of pastor that's in tune with this generation today. How does being relative look? What does that mean when we say to a pastor? Because sometimes we hear that word just tossed. We need to be relative. But I'd like to know what does that mean, and what is, as a pastor, to maybe the pew member that's tuned in, they need to know what we view that word, relative. We don't view this as a loose word. When you hear that word as a pastor, what comes to your mind?
To be perfectly honest with you, my first dive into that, to be relative, I think we have to go back to the text and say you have to know those that labor among you.
That's right.
Okay.
Because to be relative, it's based on cultural beliefs.
Gotcha.
It's based on historical traditions. It's based on demographics. And you can't take a broad stroke because you can't think just because you are a millennial that you want to come to church and the pastor has on skinny jeans and a white t-shirt. There are some millennials that work not for Fortune 500, but Fortune 100 companies. And these people every day are in suit and ties. And so when they come to church, they're expecting to see the same thing that they see on a daily basis. But one thing I think that has to happen is to be relative. The first thing that you have to do is you have to be true to who you are.
That's it.
I will always say this, the Word Church, God has blessed us to be able to touch so many different demographics, backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses. But one thing that I always say, when you come to the Word Church, you're going to get an African-American pastor.
Wow.
And so when I stand, I talk about things that are relative to me and to who I am true with.
Gotcha.
So I am going to bring up police brutality. I'm going to bring up about how we need to invest. I'm going to bring up about how we need to go back and buy the block. I do that every Sunday.
Yeah.
My wife say I have my Nat Turner moments. She sits to my left every Sunday and she looks down at her watch to make sure that I don't go too deep in it. But when you are true to yourself, this is one thing that I'll say. When you know the destination that you're going to, you will continue to move in that direction no matter what's going on around you.
Gotcha.
When you don't know where you're going, opportunity becomes a distraction.
Okay.
Because you'll start now looking at your counterpart, not your competitor, your counterpart that's down the street from you.
Yeah.
And so he's doing a community event and he's giving away backpacks. So you want to do a community event and give away backpacks.
Yeah.
But the demographic of your church is not built like
Absolutely,
that.
dude.
You may need to do a small business seminar at your church.
Absolutely.
So when you understand who you are and be true to where you are, the niche is always going to attract the consumer.
Absolutely.
Because there's always somebody looking for something. The problem with the African American church that I believe is that the people in the pews are looking for something, but the sad part about it is the pastor, he's looking for something.
The leader is as well.
Yeah. Wow. And so if everybody's looking, everybody is seeking.
Yeah.
And so somebody has to have the answer to be able to give the answer to those that are seeking the question.
Wow. That's exactly right.
Well, I don't know. I got two Erics on the stage. I don't know which one I want to jump into this conversation piece.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, just to jump on his back, the same thing I was going to say is that truth. I mean, and this is my ploy to God often is don't make me popular, make me necessary. And I think, you know, with
say it again.
Don't make me popular, make me necessary. And I think like what happens is, like you said, when the pastor is seeking and the people are seeking, oftentimes we change who we are to fit the need of the moment.
Yes.
And if you change who you are to fit the need of the moment, then eventually that moment changes, and then you're no longer relevant. But if you're necessary, it doesn't matter if the time changes, you'll always be needed. And this is what truth does. Truth make you necessary. That's why when Jesus came, he was so different from the religious leaders. The religious leaders, they added so many laws to adjust to the times. Jesus said, "No, I'm the truth." He remained the same. Yeah, this is who I am. Yeah. He never adjusted who he was to fit the times.
Wow.
He stayed who he was, and that's what kept him relevant. So that's why just last week we said 2 weeks ago we celebrated resurrection, because we still talking about him after 2,000 years later, because he was necessary. Yeah. And most of us oftentimes in our modern day church, I asked one pastor asked me, said, "What are you doing over there?" I said, "What I'm doing is I'm remaining true to who God told me to be."
That's awesome.
I said, Pastor, I told myself, if you look back at your vision that God gave you 10 years ago, I promise you it's totally different now than what it was then. If God gave it to you then, you can augment it, but you have to stay true to the foundation of your vision. Wow. Just like you said, my call is to bring biblical literacy back to the body of Christ. I know that's what I'm called to do. Yeah. And like I said, sometimes my church people will come and they say, "Well, Pastor, why don't we give away book bags? Why don't we have a pantry?" I said, our demographic is totally different. Right. And so one day, when after the storm came, a few years ago, my people said, "Well, Pastor, I think we should, do this for the community." I said, "Listen here, our church wasn't even affected by the flood at all. Our community, nothing flooded in our community. But my people just insisted that they want to do it." I said, "Listen, my hands are off. You do it. Let me show you why we won't do it." So they brought all of this stuff to the church. Nobody came.
Wow.
We had to end up taking all of the stuff from our church that we had and bring it all the way to the south side, because churches and pastors over there needed it. And so now it's a teaching moment for me at my church to let my people know is that we have to remain true to who we are if you're going to remain relevant. And I'm done with this. If you look at the Marriott, I just stayed in the Marriott in Virginia. You go to the Marriott, they got spa, they have a jacuzzi, they have an inside pool, outside pool, but right across the street you have Motel 6 where they leave the light on for you. Right? So Motel 6, go over there. If you go to Motel 6 expecting a jacuzzi and an outside pool, you're not going to get it.
You're not going to get it.
But watch this. Motel 6 looks across the street and they see people going to the Marriott, but they also see people coming to them. Wow. Motel 6 does not have a jacuzzi, not because it's not making money. Yeah. They don't have a jacuzzi because they know who they're called to. Yeah. And they're true to who they are. Wow. They could easily say, "Well, we've made millions of dollars. Let's add a jacuzzi." But then they lose the target audience who they wish they were called. Wow. Because they know there are more people looking for $49.99 than there is looking for $2.99. Right? And so it's not that they're not making money, it's just that they're true to who they are.
So needless to say, while we're having this huddle conversation, you didn't stay at the Motel 6.
No, I didn't stay at the Motel 6. Nah, I went to Marriott where they don't leave the light on for you. You have to turn it on yourself,
Turn the light
Reverend.
on your own.
You gotta pay for that.
Yeah. They gotta pay for that jacuzzi, right?
You gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go get in it, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be on your ticket,
Yeah,
your
you
invoice.
got to pay for it, right?
Wow.
Oh God.
My friend, you want to jump in this huddle conversation?
Man, I think these two men of God have pretty much said it all
Yeah.
about being relative. I will just add this to what they say. I echo everything that they said, and the only thing that I will add to this, when we talk about being relative, when you look at the root word relate, we have to be able to relate. And one of the challenges that we're facing is the backstory of the church, because in the backstory of the church, it wasn't about us being relative to anyone. It was about them coming in, being able to relate to us. Well, now we on turntables, and that stuff then turned around.
Yeah.
So now the DJ is playing another song back. He's playing another beat back, and you got to be able to relate to those people, because in the world's eye view, or from the world's eye view, and I deal with a lot of professionals at my church, majority entrepreneurs, they're not going to commit to coming anywhere that cannot relate to where they're coming from. I'm not coming to a place that can't relate to where I'm coming from, because if you cannot relate to where I'm coming from, you may not understand my purpose here. You may try to appoint me to a position when I'm not. I didn't come to be appointed to a position. I came to learn the curriculum of Christ. And we want to put everybody hands on deck, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. That's not all the time true in every case. So we have to be able to relate in order to stay relative. You got to be able to relate to your demographic. You got to be able to relate to your community, and stay within your vortex when it's time for you to stay into your vortex, but also be weatherproof. And so if you have to go outside of your climate
Yeah.
to reach somebody,
Yeah.
you're able to go outside of your climate, all while maintaining the same passport you started with, your true, authentic identity.
Wow.
Never trade it. Don't ever roll the dice on identity.
Wow.
That's good, man.
Can I be transparent for a moment while we're in the huddle? I need a Dr. Eric Sims in my life. I need a Dr. Eric Brown in my life, and I definitely need a Dr. Jamel Johnson, because I grew up in one church. But I was privileged to, my initial gifting to the body of Christ was centered around the music. I'm a musician. God has graced us and blessed us to be able to work with choirs and to serve as minister of music for several churches outside of what I was out of my sphere, which was the Pentecostal arena that I've come from. And the challenge for me is that I came into pastoring trying to duplicate what I saw my founder do. And of course, I was blessed, and I'm honored and humbled to say that I was able to succeed my father. And so I came into pastoring trying to pastor the generation that I came into, trying to pastor according to their style, their method, and so when as times began to evolve, time changed, but I didn't change. And so the hard fist, I came up from that era. You messed up, you got sat down. You got publicly rebuked, and what have you. And this generation is teaching me how to pastor. It's teaching me to be more sensitive, more considerate. I'm a very lovable person, I feel, that I am. But what is helping me today, and I'm saying this because there's some pastor listening that was a replica of yours truly. And what has helped me to become more diverse in my approach to pastoring is being around a Dr. Jamel Johnson, hearing your perspective and your style and why you pastor the way you style. And I didn't know. I just learned in this huddle that my friend is he's a Trinitarian. He's a
He's a oneness.
he's not Muslim.
He got a bean powder somewhere.
But now I understand how you've arrived to your methodology and your approach and your style to pastoring. And the more I'm listening to you, Dr. Brown, I'm seeing why you pastor the way you pastor. And of course, my friend, we talk all the time. And not to say that I'm to adopt the exactitude of everything you're doing, but there's some things you're doing that I believe I need. There's some appetizers, some things on the appetizer plate that I want to try.
That's right.
Same here.
Yeah.
Because it's important to me that I'm not just popular,
Yes.
but I am necessary.
Yes.
It's important to me that I am really reaching this generation, as well as I pastor a church that still is not 100% millennial.
Yes.
I have some pillows.
Yes.
So I have to be very strategic. I have at least about 5 generations in our church. Our church is 62 years of age, and I have to be very wise in how I address all ages, all categories. So, as Paul says, that he became all things that he may win some.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm having to learn. And I'm sure that there are some pastors under the sound of my voice is in that same category. So, my point that I want to get to is that what has helped me balance the special case that I have is having a Dr. Eric Sims, having a Dr. Eric Brown, having a Dr. Jamel Johnson. And what I'm saying to some pastors that's listening to me today, you got to get out of your circle.
Yes.
Oh.
You got to get out of your circle, out of your bubble. And you got to be open to other perspectives if you're going. I came up in an era that if they don't want to be, they're leaving because they don't want to be saved.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the
That's
case.
not the case.
No.
That they don't want to be saved. I just think that being relative and not being a future finder is missing in many pulpits. And that's why they're leaving your church, going to the church down the street.
Yeah,
that's why they leave my church, going to the church down the street, around the corner, because they are getting fed. And wherever the food is delicious, that's where people go.
That's
And
right.
one of the things I had to work on is I strive to be an exegetical preacher. But I had one of my millennials to tell me, Pastor, bring it to our level. So I had to kind of close the Greek book up, the Hebrew book, and I had to just be very foundational because I do have levels of learners in our church as well. So I'm a hush because I'm enjoying you guys. You guys got me. Listen, y'all done got a buzz going on in this circle, man. A buzz. Listen, we're gonna wrap this up real quick because I don't want to keep our audience all day. But real talk. Let's have some real talk for about the next 8 minutes here.
Okay.
Real talk. Dr. Eric Sims.
Okay.
How are you surviving financially, mentally, enthusiastically about ministry and just life?
Oh man, that's great. I will say this: 25 years in ministry, I just started surviving. I say I just started surviving because prior to this moment, I was so lost by the works of ministry, trying to stay busy, trying to do something until I didn't enjoy the money. It was there. I didn't enjoy it. I just found another project to spend it on.
Yeah.
Another conference, another revival. And so when I say I'm now surviving, I've learned now that ministry, when it comes to ministry and being a well person, human.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to ministry and being a well person, you definitely have to have security beyond Sunday and Wednesday.
Wow.
So how do I survive financially? I have a building downtown Shreveport on the main strip. We just hosted a financial symposium. Someone from the city, we didn't host it. They had it at my building downtown Shreveport.
Okay.
We got other local businesses that are coming in, renting space now, have a whole office side, event center side, just a big, nice, big deal. And we're just now getting it going the last few months. And I've been sitting on it for 2 years. The reason why I had not touched it for 2 years is because I was doing ministry.
Okay.
So whenever it was time for me to survive financially, I said, you know what? I'm not gonna keep on stressing the ministry financial. I'm gonna take the principles that I teach others about entrepreneurship, activate in my own life, manifest the prophecy that I gave in my own world, manifest that. You said, how am I surviving mentally? Mentally, I know at the end of the day, my agenda is to remember my first calling and to fall in love with my first calling. My first calling was not a pastor. It was not a prophet. It was not Dr. Sims. After I got my doctorate, that wasn't my first calling. My first calling was son. My mom and dad only knew that they were having a son.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And they knew I was having a son because that's what God sent. So my first calling was to be a son. And so now I'm just a son of God. I'm not allowing ministry or church or religion or what was or what is to come to rob me of my experience as a son. And that alone causes the enthusiasm necessary to enjoy every day.
Man, that's good. I love it. I love it. I love it. Dr. Jamel,
Yes, sir.
how you surviving, man?
I'm great. It took a minute to get.
Yeah.
And I would tell any pastor this: enjoy the journey. If I can say that to anybody, man, take a deep breath, stop stressing, enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
Our first building was a funeral home. We were having service on Sundays in the chapel of a funeral home.
I remember that.
And my thought was always, to grow. I preached vision every Sunday. But I was too much of a future finder. I put myself so far in the future that I couldn't find myself in the present.
Wow.
And so then I started to see some success, and then there's a weight of success. And a lot of people don't talk about
They
that.
don't talk about that.
There was one time I heard Bishop Jake say this. He said that everybody wants the keys to this building, but if I give you the keys today, you'll have a nervous breakdown. And so as I have progressed, I've had to learn that I have to refocus. And so now I accept the fact that I'm hired by God. I serve Him.
Yeah.
And I'm at the pleasure of the Master.
Amen.
Wow.
And so that has brought so much peace back into my house, and has really reshifted, because there's been several shifts.
Yeah.
So that may not be a word, Dr.
Yeah, no, that's a good word.
But every pastor, I will tell you this: there will be ebbs and flows.
Yes.
There will be ebbs and flows. Kind of reminds me of Astroworld. You're gonna have that tick, 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 tick. Feels like taking you a long time to get up. Then when you finally get up, it's like your heart gonna drop.
Yes, sir.
Every person that you invested in,
Yeah.
every graduation you went to,
Yeah.
every light bill you paid, and you're gonna find yourself sometimes by yourself.
That's right.
But if you stay there, because before the roller coaster can start, before they can start, they have to make sure that you're in good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as long as you're in good, you're gonna come back up again.
Yeah, that's good.
And so in that come back up again,
Yeah.
I've come back up not with the burden of people, but with the burden of the Master.
That's good.
That's right.
And so understanding that, man, so much has spilled out from that. So to your point, from an entrepreneur standpoint, I have a show. It's called Kingdompreneurship. And I talk about biblical principles, applying them in the entrepreneur world. And I'm just giving back to them what I have received. Finishing up my 5th book.
That's good.
I am, I say I'm a success coach. I have a company called Increase Me, Momentum Effectively. do all of my speaking there. Believe it or not, I've moved from being an itinerant preacher to being an itinerant speaker. So there are sometimes during the week where I'm at Shell, I'm at Rice. I may not ever get to a revival, but God has given me an opportunity to revive some people in the business world.
I love it.
And I'm drawing them right back to Christ, man. So
I love it.
and who knows what the next 2 or 3 years is going to be.
Yeah.
There's a guy that was on my show. He said something that I will leave with everybody here. He said, adapt or die. Adapt or die.
That's good. That's good.
Adapt or die.
Wow.
So 5 years from now, there may be something totally different. There might be 5 event centers.
That's right.
And so you may leave that to your son, and you're back in Dallas, but adapt or die. And so I understand that if change is going to come, I want to be in front of the change and not have the change me.
That's right.
Wow. Wow. Dr.
Yeah.
Brown?
Yeah, well, I would say that the same, man. It took me a minute to get here, but man, when I say I enjoy life, enjoy ministry, enjoy my family, one thing the Lord told me, and I realized this in the last 5 years of ministry, and that is, I had to stop becoming a starving chef. I would cook for everybody else, but I wasn't eating myself. And I realized as an exec, I was speaking to a chef at Vic and Anthony's, and I asked out, and the food was good. And afterwards, he came to meet me and my wife. It was her birthday, and I asked him. I said, "Man, I said, do you eat here?" He said, "No, I typically don't eat here because I don't cook here." He said, "I eat where other executive chefs cook." He said, because as an executive chef, although I have sous chefs and cooks under me, they can cook to meet the need of my palate. And oftentimes, as senior pastors and apostles and prophets and leaders, we preach to others, but we don't eat ourselves. And so we end up dying and giving life to the people, and we die from the message that we're giving life to. And so I had to realize from that point, what I needed to do was I needed to now put people in my life who I can eat from, other executive chefs. Because although I have sous chefs in my church, they can't cook to the needs of my palate.
That's true.
And so what I had to realize after that is that now I'm submitted to other men who can speak into my life.
Yeah.
Men that I can trust, men of wisdom, men of sagacity who I understand, they understand where I am. And from that point, they taught me how to look at ministry and how life, like Elijah, he just come from off this great battle on Mount Carmel. And then days later, he's plummeted in great depression.
Yes.
Because it's one thing to leave a stage, and you guys, we all have experienced this. You sitting on the stage, and everyone is waiting on your every word just to live. And they feel as if I can hear from my man of God. This man of God is going to change my life. You leave that applauding all of this, how awesome you are, how anointed you are. And if you're on the road, then you have to go back to a hotel room where it's just you.
Yeah.
How do you deal with those thoughts? Because at the end of the day, although they saying you're so wonderful, your internal struggles and your internal battles and the thoughts that you deal with. And if they only knew. And so you leave the pulpit saying, God, thank you. I don't even know how I can do this.
Yeah.
And so I've learned now to enjoy life. My family is very, very important to me. Now, at one point, the church became my biggest mistress. And I spent so much time with the church that I almost lost my family. And now I had to revamp it now. Like I said, there's been a reshift now. And so now understand what's important, what's necessary. Business-wise, we have business. Like I said, I've written 6 books. I'm in the process of finishing 5 more. And like I said, an itinerant speaker, itinerant preacher. Just different things, man. And so now I have so much life as it relates to ministry, and I don't feel like I'm dying or I'm drowning. Now it's fun now. And the last thing I did was I delegate now. I delegate. I
love it.
I delegate now. So I rarely preach at my church as often now. I've ordained 8 pastors in my church now. So and now that gives me opportunity to move around to all the other locations in different states that we have. And I haven't preached at my church in the last 3 weeks. And Bible studies are Sundays, but there's no drop off in the money. There's no drop off in attendance or anything. Because I've prepared our people for other voices. Yeah. The Bible says it takes 5-fold ministerial gifts to mature the body of Christ. I can't suspect that I'm the only voice.
Right.
So I need assistance, and so I delegate
That's
now.
good. That's
I
good.
delegate.
Well, pastors, listen, we've exhausted our time, and this has been. I could stay out here all day with you guys. You guys have really blessed me today, and I really appreciate.
Thanks for having us,
Yes,
Bishop.
sir.
Thanks for responding to the invite. It's been awesome. It's been a tremendous day. We're here in Houston, Texas, in beautiful weather today.
Yes.
And as you have been able to hear the heart of these wonderful men of God who they've gone through ups and downs, ins and out. They've seen the good, the bad, and they're still hanging in there, determined to do the work in the will of God in the spirit and the manner of excellence. And we want you to know, as we've talked about several things today, we talked about the generation today, how to stay connected. We talked about, there's a pastor that's listening, how to be open for other considerable methods as it relates to being relative in the day and time that we're living in. And so I just pray within this span of time that you've given to us, that you have gleaned and received some nuggets that you can chew on, hold on, and know that our ear is to the cry of those who are wondering, are there any pastors out here that are sensitive to our concerns as it relates to the future of the church? And I want to say to you, based upon these gentlemen who have come and met us today in the huddle, yes, there are men who are sensitive to the heartbeat of God as it relates to pastoring the people that's been assigned to us, and to make sure that God use us for his ultimate purpose and glory, to push you into your God-given purpose, and to do it with joy and to do it with passion. Listen, we're getting ready to sign off here. This is our first, but many more to come, Huddle Conversations. And once again, I have Dr. Eric Sims all the way from Shreveport, Dallas. Thank you once again. I want to hear one thing for you before we go. I want to thank you, Dr. Eric Brown. I almost called him Dr. Sim. When you got two, I'm sandwiched between two Erics. I don't know what may happen. One may bless me on the right, one on the left, however God desires to do it. I'm open to it. And I'm so thankful to God, Dr. Jamel Johnson on the day. Man, you blessed me. I appreciate what you're doing, the things you're doing in the body of Christ to transition us into greater, and to cause the body of Christ to be viewed by the world as not just people of emotionalism, but we do have minds. We are creative, we are brilliant, and we do know how to package the work of God, the kingdom of God, in such a way that is attracted to all types of people from all walks of life. Amen. And Dr. Jamal, I need you to just take 30 seconds and take us out on today, and just say something, look in that camera and say something to that person that may be listening right now that has that feels they've lost hope as it relates to the church, and feel that we're out of touch, and that we don't care, and that we're really going the wrong direction. Can you say something today to that person who has possibly have left the church, considering leaving the church, to cause them to see the church? We really are trying, and we really are working to make sure that we are providing that meal that would cause them to want to come and eat, digest it, so that they could be nourished with all the nutrients and be developed, and that we're really striving to push them to their God-given purposes. You got 30 seconds.
To that point, my wife, she loved going to Chili's. She would always get the chicken tortilla soup. And to the point we went so much, when I called, they knew exactly what she wanted. One night, she got hold to some bad chicken. She made up in her mind that she was never going to fool with Chili's again. 2 years removed, we're coming out of an airport, and the only thing that was available was Chili's. She was so hungry that she had to settle for Chili's. And she said, I don't know what I want to eat. I said, baby, try the chicken tortilla soup. She said, well, last time I ate it, it made me sick. I said, that was in Houston. said, try it again. She ate the chicken tortilla soup.
Yep.
And from that point on, since we've been back, she's been eating it again. But you know what happened? She gave it a chance again. I don't know what happened when you ate the last time. It could have been some old chicken, or it could have been from the hands of the person that was making the chicken. But don't cancel out the entire corporation for one bad experience.
That's excellent.
Come back again, because I promise you, there's food at the table that's ready to nourish your soul.
Excellent.
I love it.
Excellent.
I love it.
Excellent.
I love it. Dr. Pryor, you got 30 seconds. Talk to somebody that's listening.
Yeah,
right now.
similar. I want to tell you, man, the church, I know we have a lot of people saying the church is in bad state. Man, listen, the church is in the greatest place we've ever been, ever in the history of the church. And I would like to tell you, I don't know what happened. I could care less about what happened in the sense of some person in your past or some person, in your former day who mistreated you or mishandled you. But I want to tell you now, come back to the church, because this is the greatest entity in the world. And everyone is not like the person who hurt you. I promise you, there's a church out there that God will use to recalibrate your heart and to cause you to fall in love with Christ again, and your life will never be the same. Never allow anyone to keep you from what's best for you, regardless of how it made you feel.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Dr. Eric Sims, God saves the best for last.
Well, I tell you what I want to say is very simple. Never allow a ministry experience to rob you of your sanctuary experience. It's two different things, ministry and sanctuary. There are some things that you can encounter in ministry that may be distasteful according to your own personal perspective and your opinion, and you're entitled to it. But what happens in ministry and what happens in the sanctuary, that which happens in the sanctuary is sacred, and it is sanctioned by God. And so you should never allow what happens in ministry to distract or debit what it is that you can experience in the sanctuary. Because the sanctuary experience is the highest experience that you'll ever experience here on the planet, being able to entertain heaven while here on earth. And you need that in your life, regardless of what has happened. And God's not taking notes or keeping a tally on everything that offended you. Some things you have to let it grow so that you'll be able to grow. You have to let it go so you'll be able to grow. Sometimes letting go it means letting grow. Sometimes you have to give people time to grow up, and maybe what happened was legitimate. I don't know what your reasons are, but if it was legitimate, pardon them. Because you also have to remember, just because someone is an enemy or a foe to you, it doesn't necessarily make them an enemy or a foe to God. So what we have to do is be very careful. Separate ministry from sanctuary. The work of the ministry should never cancel out the worship of the sanctuary. And that's it. I bid you all grace and Godspeed.
Excellent, man.
Awesome food for thought. Take heed. And thank you once again for tuning in to The Huddle. God bless you.